I turned off news altogether.
I hate to say it, but I don't trust much of anything.
It's the rage bait.
It feels like it's trying to divide people.
If we got clear facts, maybe we can calm down a little.
NBC News brings you clear reporting. Let's meet at the facts. Let's move forward from there. NBC News, reporting for America.
Once upon a mundane morning, Barb's day got busy without warning. A realtor in need of an open house sign. No, 50 of them, and designed before 9.
My head hurts.
Any mighty tools to help with his plight?
Aha!
Barb made her move. She opened Canva and got in the groove.
Bulk creating Canva sheets. Create 50 signs fit for suburban streets.
Done in a click, all complete.
Sweet!
Now, imagine what your dreams can become when you put imagination to work at canva.com.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to another How We're the podcast, and we gather ahead of Sunderland's fixture at home to Everton with the prospect of making it 3 successive victories in the Premier League for the first time since March and April of 2008. That's my reckoning anyway. On that occasion, we beat Villa and Fulham away from home with a victory against West Ham United at the Stadium of Light sandwiched in between those two. In that time, I've lived in 3 houses, and I now have a lad who is in secondary school, and this was 5 years before he entered the world. So the bottom line is, it's been a while since it's happened. But today, we're going to be looking at past meetings between Sunderland and Everton on Wearside, and I have 2 regulars who will help me talk through the good and the bad of our clashes down the years. And first up, we have Andrew Smithson. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, Chris. You okay?
I am, and fresh from talking to Paul Bracewell, Andrew, who we had on the pod, and actually, it was great to hear that he's kind of doing these sport and directing courses and might be trying to get back into the game. He's got a few offers, but I don't think there's many players with as many links as he's got between the 2 clubs.
No, you're right. It probably, it was a good choice, a good selection for guest, and I'll be honest, I wish I'd came up with it, because you and I had a little conversation recently, and you threw out a couple of names, and I was a bit annoyed when I'd seen that you'd got hold of Paul Bracewell. But you're right. He's well liked in both camps, and his time at Sunderland in particular, he saw very different generations of Sunderland, what with them coming and going and returning at different stages in our history. The only thing I would dispute with you there, though, Chris, is what do you mean 2008 was a lifetime ago? 2008 was surely only a couple of years ago, and Paul Bracewell was playing for Sunderland in the middle of midfield. What, 5 years ago, max? Surely it can't be any longer than that, Chris. I won't have it.
Well, let's prove a point, because we also have Jonny Hawley with us. Hello, Jonny.
Good day, Chris. Good day, Andrew. Yeah, I'm here to shatter all your dreams and remind you that, in fact, time does march on, and whippersnappers like me come along to ruin the party for you.
Well, I can see your 2 faces, and me and Andrew's next to yours, and just says everything, really, mate. But just
a lot, Chris.
Yeah, I'll take that in good faith this time, but you're on thin ice now, mind.
Andrew, let's just face it, we're old and haggard, mate. There's no getting around it, really, is there?
Okay, I'll forgive you.
I could lie if you want to, Andrew, but let's
I've got other things I can be doing with me time, Chris. I've had to move things around to come onto this chat and talk to you.
Well, you're just gonna have to accept taking a hammering for a few minutes. Look, I'm in the same boat with you. Don't worry about that. But Jonny, just looking at Everton and Sunderland, actually, and it's interesting. We had the athletic reporter who covers Everton on the other day, Dave Patrick Boylan, who was fantastic, telling us about Everton. He was saying that. He says when Everton fans, because he's an Everton fan and he looks at Sunderland, he said you can see so many parallels between the 2 clubs. For a start, we've got some noisy neighbours, but I think a lot. Peter Reid always said, we were in the kind of category of a proper football club like Everton. We've got that similar feel about it, and of course, we've got the links with Bradley Lowry as well, because Everton Football Club was so brilliant through that as well. But there's a lot of parallels between the clubs.
Absolutely. And funnily enough, actually, I was talking about this last weekend. The weekend that we played Chelsea, I was away with some of my old mates from uni, and one of the lads is an Everton fan, and we had a pretty long conversation about sort of all things Sunderland and Everton, and one of the things that we kept repeating to each other was exactly what you've just said. You look at the two clubs, the parallels are immediately obvious, aren't they? And I think both of the sets of fans kind of generally have pretty good feeling towards each other. I always have had a little bit of a soft spot for Everton, maybe with one particular manager discounted, but if we just look past that,
we'll call him the Scottish manager now, I think.
Yeah, the Scottish manager. But yeah, no, I've always really liked Everton. I've always, had half an eye on the results and that sort of thing. So I think you're right, and you can even go further back. The Roker Park and Goodison Park, an architect in common or a designer. You know what I mean? So there's always been those parallels running through the history of both the clubs, and I always enjoy the occasion of playing Everton, although as I'm sure you might touch on, not always enjoyed the actual results of when we've played Everton. So hopefully we can focus on some of the slightly rarer positives in that string.
Yeah, and luckily we've got Andrew on. I mean, tell us a little bit about that the architecture and the Archibald Leach and all of that sort of stuff at Roker Park and Goodison.
Yeah, I mean, he was quite a famous architect and worked on a lot of stadiums, but Goodison Park is still a lasting testimony to how such a brilliant job he did. I believe the Everton's women's team are now using it as their main ground, and having been in Goodison Park a couple of times and having been there on Boxing Day when we've lost, let me assure you, at that point in time, I was not saying, "Oh yeah, Everton are similar to Sunderland. This is quite nice." I were, friends across the waters there. But yeah, the ground did feel exactly how Roker Park did to me, just full of character, full of atmosphere. It probably wasn't as plush as the types of places we enjoy now, but it was to be like Yadar. It was real football, and it felt special being there.
Yeah.
And Archibald Lee, just an amazing body of work. I've got a tattoo on my arm there of the lattice work on the main stand at Roker Park, just instantly recognisable. Fantastic. I think as well he also did the clock stand at Roker Park, but that isn't maybe as well remembered because it doesn't have his kind of signature across the front. And as soon as you take over Chris talking again, I'm going to double check that on Google to make sure I've not said something that's utter rubbish.
Yeah, I think people want to mention it because I think the clock stand was a bit of a death trap towards the end, really, wasn't it? But anyway, moving on. Actually, but to be fair, in terms of Goodison, it was up there with my favourites with Villa Park. They were two.
It's a brilliant thing that it has been kept in use for the women's team, because it would have been a real shame if Goodison was demolished.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, they've gone through a similar kind of event in terms of moving stadium as we did, and we'll get into that a little bit. But let's go into our record at home to Everton in total. It doesn't look too bad overall. We've played 89 times on Wearside against Everton. We've won 49 of those, drawn 18 and lost 22. At the Stadium of Light, though, we've played them 16 times in all competitions, won just 5 of those, drawn 4 and lost 7, with the last win being that brilliant 3-0 win under Sam Allardyce, which we'll come on to in more detail. Looking at just this century, since the year 2000, we've played them 33 times, home and away, and won just 7. Which doesn't make for good reading. Well, we'll get into specific games from the history books, and we'll look way back, because 1925 was a good year for playing Everton at Roker. We played them in February and October of that year. We won the first one 4-1, and the later fixtures 7-3. with Dave Halliday unsurprisingly scoring twice for us that day, and a certain Dixie Dean scoring one of Everton's 3 goals. We beat them 7-0 at Roker Park on Boxing Day 1934, when it seems the Everton players had a few cherries too many the day before, as I think it was a bit of a tradition in that day. If you go back through the years and look at how many goals were scored on Boxing Day back in the day, wasn't there a famous one?
Boxing Day 1963. I'll get it in. I'm sure people are crying out with that. Listen to this. Yeah, 63. That's the famous one.
Yeah, well, I think they're all like that. Players still half cut on Boxing Day, not really caring. But there was an epic 3-3 draw in 1936 after we went 3-0 up. Dixie Dean got their equaliser that day. We won 4-1 in 1946, 4-0 in 1951, 3-0 in 1955. And then we beat them 3-1 in the 5th round of the FA Cup in 1964 in front of just over 62,000, which is the biggest crowd recorded to see the lads take on Everton on Wearside. We beat them on Sam Allardyce's debut in August 1980. We beat them 3-1. And then in April 1982, Gary Rowell scored twice and Colin West scored the other when we won 3-1. I don't know if you've got any little bits and pieces about those, Andrew.
Well, I was just going to throw in that one where we beat them 3-1 at the start of the 1980-81 season. I wondered, Johnny, have you got any guesses to who scored Sunderland's goals?
You're going to expose us as a fraud here when I can't even think of a name to say. I'll say Raoul.
No, say yourself.
Oh, no, you know what? That feels very much like a Kelvin Beattie special, that, you know. Was it Big John Hawley, was it?
Yes, it was, aye.
Nobody tell me Mama she'll finally clock on that's who I was named after on the sly.
Yeah, so Johnny was in action, and yeah, played his part in a win over Everton.
Sorry, Chris, I've spoiled your flow. I just had to get that one in.
No, we have to get Johnny Hawley in there, because so that was the April 1982 one. And actually, it was just before the first one I wanted to stop on, actually, because the last one I wanted to stop on was the last competitive game at Roker Park, 3rd of May 1997. We'd actually won only 2 in 14 games leading into that game, which is incredible to look back at that. We've been beaten at at home by Southampton in the previous home game. Don't know if you remember that one, Andrew, because it felt bad after that one when Igor scored that winner, because that was a night there was a bit of unrest with Peter Reid playing Paul Stewart up on his own, if you remember rightly, and people couldn't quite understand it.
Yeah, it was an odd one because I don't think at the start of the calendar year we were expecting a relegation fight. I seem to think we were mid-table and we were doing okay, and then it slowly crept up on us. And you're right, that game against Southampton, just people were furious with the formation Peter Reid went for. We had this mad period where we seemed to get 7 or 8 corners in front of the full end in quick succession, and yet somehow we just wasted them all. So there was real anger, I think, because the team were always rock solid at the back. It was just getting those goals, and particularly against Southampton, I think we all knew that was going to be crucial as to whether we stayed up.
Yeah,
it wasn't an enjoyable night, in all honesty.
Yeah, so it's interesting though, because that is the backdrop that leads us into the last ever competitive game at Roker Park. Feelings weren't good. I don't think there was a huge amount of optimism going into the game, but it is strange to look back because looking at Everton, they had problems of their own because Dave Watson was player caretaker manager at the time. He'd taken over from Joe Royle, who'd been sacked in late March. But Andrew, I remember going to this game, and I was I was quite young at the time, but I remember bizarrely, because it was such a big thing, I had the same feeling for that game as I did for the Wickham playoff final. It was almost like we can't lose the last competitive, because I don't know if you remember the gantry, the TV gantry in the I say gantry, was this little box in the Roker end that held one camera on top of it. But there was a countdown all season that was counting down, and for this one, it said the last game, and I just didn't see us losing this game. It had this buzz around it all day, where everyone knew that this was the last game the last time we were going to go to Roker Park with something riding on it. And I just had this feeling that I just thought, well, we're going to win this today. We almost have to.
Yeah, there was an unusual feeling around it. I don't know if you remember, Chris, but on the night time, Billy Hardy had a world title fight against Prince Nazim. So it was this huge day in Sunderland history, and I'd been looking forward to it for ages. There was the historical aspect of it being the last game at league or like competitive game at Roker Park, but I kind of had to put that to one side because the match was so important. You know, you sometimes think, I sometimes think I might have taken in those last few games at Roker Park more if we'd been mid-table and there was nothing to play for. The focus was, are we going to stay up? And I'm staggered, Chris, at that run of form you just read out there, because in my memory, I didn't think we were in that much trouble going into the Everton game because I was convinced we were going to win. I'd forgotten as well about the Joe Royal, Dave Watson business, which just shows how much attention I pay to the opposition. It's kind of, I just look at Sunderland and think, oh, we'll win. Doesn't matter if we're playing Everton or Brazil, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting looking at the lineups. I mean, just quickly, some of those Everton players. We had Neville Southall in goal, Earl Barrett, Terry Phelan, Klaus Thompson, Dave Watson, Richard Dunn, Graham Stewart, Nick Barmby, Duncan Ferguson, Michael Branch, and Gary Speed was there, 11. Some good players there, a good lineup. Sunderland's team, the one he went out with, Lionel Perez in goal, Gareth Hall at right back, Richard Ordinley Howie in the centre of defence, Michael Gray at left back. He played a really strange midfield. Darren Williams seemed to be on the right-hand side, Paul Bracewell and Kevin Ball in the middle, and Chris Waddle, of course, give it to Waddler out on the left with Paul Stewart and Niall Quinn up front. Just quickly, the subs, because it's slightly interesting with Chris Woods on the bench, goalkeeper. I was certain he was going to replace Lionel Perez at some point. Alan Johnson, Martin Smith, Alex Ray, and David Kelly. And I just say the subs because, interestingly, we spoke to Craig Russell about it, who was our top scorer at the time. He was in the full end that day. Wasn't injured or anything like that. And he said it was really strange this season where he always had a couple of games and then he was hooked from the squad and didn't make it. So he wasn't in the squad that day. So he thought, right, well, last competitive game, I'm going to go and stand in the full end where I used to stand and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, but absolutely brilliant. But yeah, Everton actually could have taken the lead a couple of times in the early stages. But I was watching this back. Ball played into the box and it's going to go on Quinny's head, but it's not obvious. I don't know why, but Duncan Ferguson just sticks a hand out of nowhere. And as to this day, I don't understand why. And then he looks at Niall Quinn as if he was pushed or anything, and Niall Quinn's miles away from him, and he realises he's just been an absolute idiot.
I'm pleased you said the name because I couldn't remember who it was, if it was Duncan Ferguson or not. But yeah, I remember the incident of it was almost as if the referee had blown the whistle, so he put his hands up to catch the ball. It was just mental. And like you say, he's then looking around as if to go, well, surely somebody must have pushed us. I wouldn't have just done that for the hell of it. Yeah. And the Sunderland players are almost shrugging their shoulders. It's interesting. I mean, I hadn't remembered that Craig Russell story. That is fascinating. It says a lot, though. And I wonder if maybe that was why the Southampton game, there was a bit of needle in the crowd, because there's some half-decent attacking options available there who weren't getting in the team at the moment. I love Darren Williams. I think he was a great servant for us, but he wasn't an out-and-out right winger. I think he played the same position against Wimbledon as well the week after. So that bit peculiar, that. But yeah, the handball incident, Chris, was just, I don't know what Ferguson was thinking of. Just so surreal to see.
It's not like Duncan Ferguson to have a stinker against Sunderland, though, is it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, it's not for the first time he lost his head either, to be honest, just sticking his hand in the air. But, and I mentioned the Southampton game because, Paul Stewart he was kind of getting a lot of stick against Southampton I remember him trying to come back from offside and people were giving him absolute pelters against Southampton at Roker Park. And then, not long after, it's the last competitive game, you get a penalty just after the half hour and Paul Stewart grabs the ball and steps up. And I mean, if you're talking about guts to come back from one game where you're taking that much stick to take a penalty to potentially save the club from relegation, and it's the last game at Roker Park. I mean, that takes some guts, doesn't it, Jonny?
Yeah, I mean, it's a level of self-belief that I think the average person can simply never comprehend. You know what I mean? You just add layer after layer of pressure on top. Another thing, like you say, last competitive game, relegation battle, crunch end of the season, all that. You throw that all into the mix, and you've got to walk up to the penalty spot, and it's just you against the keeper, and you've got packed out Roker Park watching you every breath that you take as you stand there in front of the ball. You've got to try and feel confident, look confident, and back yourself completely. I mean, that's fair play to anybody who ever steps up and puts himself into that situation, because I tell you right now, I couldn't do it.
Yeah. It was a cracking penalty as well, Andrew. I don't know if you remember, because Southall went the right way, but it was right in that bottom corner.
That was it. He couldn't have placed it any better. I mean, as Jonny says there, you don't want to be remembered for in the final league game at Roker Park after nearly 100 years of history. You don't want to be the one who goes down as ballooning it over the bar or whatever. It was a great penalty. I mean, Paul Stewart, obviously in recent years, we've learnt more about his story, and I have got so much respect for that fella. Just a great, amazing individual. As a player, though, at the time, there were question marks against him. People did wonder if a couple of the younger players would have been better suited to being in the team. We used to always say, well, this lad's got England experience. I think at one point he was the most expensive striker in the country, I think. I remember him. He certainly was highly regarded. We weren't seeing that standard on a week-by-week basis, but the penalty was where you saw and you realised, oh yeah, this is a proper quality footballer, to be able to deal with the nerves, as Jonny said, and as you said, Chris, to be able to hit that penalty so sweetly. He obviously did have it in him. It was a really, really good penalty. I think as well the year before, when he'd been on loan, he'd scored a penalty when we beat Derby 3-0 in the promotion race.
Yes.
That was quite a big moment in the season. So he did have the ability and an element of self-belief in him, but for various reasons, some of which were beyond his control, it wasn't. He didn't do as well at Sunderland as he would have hoped, I imagine.
Yeah. And at half-time, it was 1-0, and we brought on Alan Johnson for Gareth Hall and moved Darren Williams back to full-back. But just before the hour mark, we get a free kick just outside the box at the Fulwell end. And I remember I was at the back of the Fulwell end, and it was almost like at this point, it was this hush where everyone would just started talking as soon as the free kick was given. And it was almost like, well, Waddler, we've got Chris Waddle. And you just knew on where it was on his left foot, right? It was about a yard outside the box. And I don't know if you remember that feeling, Andrew, but it just felt like everyone just went, this is the moment where Chris Waddle's going to do this.
Yeah. And yet everybody thinks it's going to happen. And then when it does happen, there's still somehow this sense of bizarre, that's what we expected. It was phenomenal. I don't know, Chris, if you remember what the free kick was given for. I seem to think it was because Southall was trying to take a kick upfield, and I think he got his bearings wrong, and I think he technically handled outside the box before.
Really?
I think so, before throwing to kick it down the pitch. So again, that just adds to this self-destruct feeling around Everton, and they've given us the most peculiar of penalties, and then they've gone and said, "Oh, we've got one of the most talented footballers in the country playing against us." I mean, one of England, England international. He's a big star. He's won things on the continent. I tell you what, we'll just give him a free kick on the day in front of the Fulwell end on the final ever game. Not only that, he's a Sunderland fan. So, I mean, it's one of those, you couldn't write the script, but it seems as if Everton almost wanted it to happen because they've handed it to us.
Yeah, that's it. They just almost set up this moment because he smashed it right into the top corner. Neville Southall, who was an unbelievable goalkeeper, didn't even move, just watched it kind of go past. You just saw him almost a look of disbelief on Southall's face when that ball because I think actually the ball pretty much hit the stanchion, went behind and went straight into Southall's hands. If you watch it back. And Southall's got hold of the ball and it's been in the net and just bounced straight into his hands. And he just went, well, there's nothing I can do about that. But just again, it was all set up for that moment. And you kind of almost knew it was going to happen as soon as the free kick was given. But 10 minutes later, again, give it to Wadler on the left-hand side. He cut in on his supposedly weaker right foot this time. And perfect cross to the back post where Alan Johnston, of all people, got his head on it, Andrew. I don't know about you. I can't remember him ever scoring another header for Sunderland.
No, that's the only one that comes to my mind. It's just, again, though, Waddle, just phenomenal for us at that point. I think the penalty might have been the only goal we scored in the last couple of months that he didn't either score himself or create. It was a perfect cross. And there you go. Alan Johnson, not known for his heading ability, is still able to put it in the net. There's that weird sensation of you're witnessing history as it happens, and you're like, that no matter what the outcome of the season, this game will be spoken about. There's a really iconic photo somewhere of Waddle's free kick.
Yeah.
Just as he's hitting the ball in it, you can see the Fulwell end, and just it is 8,000 people just with expectation on their face.
Yeah.
And then the Johnson goal comes along, and it's like, oh, flipping heck. We're supposed to be in a relegation battle here. We've just gone and won 3-0 quite easily. It just a very, very peculiar afternoon for a lot of different reasons. And I don't think, Chris, there was any other headers coming from Alan Johnson, bless him. His skills were on the wing with the ball at his feet.
Yeah, absolutely. But he took one to put his name in the history books and be the last ever scorer at Roker Park in a competitive game. I mean, Jonny, just at the last point on this game, last competitive game at Roker Park, and obviously, your first. And I'm not quite sure where your first game would have been. The early millennium, I'm guessing, but
yeah,
because me and Andrew were both there. I mean, where does this kind of come in terms of a moment in Sunderland's history that like Roker Park? I mean, because you I suppose are the generation who knows the club at the Stadium you like exclusively, and I almost see it as almost being two very different clubs that are the one I grew up with and the one it turned into. But you know this one, so how when you look back at a game like this at Roker Park when it's the last one, I mean, how do you look at that?
Yeah, it is a funny one when you do try and like look back to those kind of things when you're my age, so you weren't there in the first place. But obviously, growing up with my dad was a Sunderland fan, that's why I'm a Sunderland fan. His dad was a Sunderland fan, so growing up is just story after story after story of everything that happened at Roker Park. Basically, you know what I mean. I feel like I watched all of these games, even though I never did. But I think in my head, if I think back or try and think back to the stadium move, I always think of the first game at the Stadium of Light. You know what I mean? That's just naturally where my head goes. So I think people my age, well, I'm saying that, I can't speak for anybody else, but I would suspect that most people, the first thought would be, first game at the Stadium of Light rather than last game at Roker Park. Because, I mean, obviously I've seen videos and everything of old games and that. I used to have a DVD with the that had the playoff semi-final against the Mags on and that, in 1990 and stuff. So I have, in a weird way, memories of Roker Park, but they're all pre the move. I think the actual that last game and where it then does shift over at the Stadium of Light, it is a bit of a weird sort of blank spot. I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because it is strange for me because I knew Roker Park at the end, but it was a very different Roker Park. So the way you're talking there, it's almost the same for me when I listen to Kelvin talk about games in the 60s when you're talking about 50,000 people at Roker Park and absolutely, and Roker Park, the Roker end being this huge thing that it wasn't in the end. If when I hear him talk about that, I just go, even though I experienced Roker Park, I wouldn't experience that Roker Park. I almost feel like I didn't experience it properly because of the stories Kelvin comes out with, and I just find it fascinating because it's the kind of the pre-move. But I think that's a good chance for us to take a quick break, and we'll be back after these.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana lets you buy your next car on your terms. Explore a massive inventory online, filter for what matters, and find your perfect match. Then choose delivery to your home or pick it up at one of Carvana's iconic car vending machines. Every car also comes with a 7-day money-back guarantee, so you can make sure it's the right fit. Buy your car on Carvana. Delivery or pickup fees may apply. Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Carvana.
And welcome back to However the podcast. And the last one we talked about was the last game at Roker Park. But you wanted to quickly touch on, Andrew, the first one in the new millennium.
Yes. I don't know if you remember, but that first season in the Premier League at the Stadium of Light, 99-2000, we started really well. We finished 7th at the end of the season, but we did hit a bit of a sticky patch around the new year. And it wasn't until March 2000 that we actually won our first game of the millennium, and it was against Everton. We went 1-0 up in the first half. Nicky Summerby scored a free kick, but it might have taken... I don't know if it either went through a hole in the wall or took a deflection. I remember there being something around the goal. There was an element of luck towards it. Everton then equalised, and it was, you mentioned him earlier, having played at Roker Park, it was Nicky Barmby scored a really good goal from outside the box. And at that point, again, Sunderland haven't won for a few months. You're starting to panic. You're getting a bit worried. Do you remember the winning goal, Chris? Because if you can't, it was an absolute cracker from Kevin Phillips.
I'm just... not off the top of my head, but I was just looking at that run that started at Goodison Park, bizarrely enough, didn't it? And then we actually turned it around against Everton. The home game at the end of March, but it was a bloody long run.
It was, and particularly because we'd got used to doing so well in the Premier League, and we thought we were going to be fine. But the goal, it was Darren Holloway that sets him up. Darren Holloway finds the ball on the edge of the box, and he turns and he finds Phillips. And Phillips just puts in this beautiful curling shot. One of those where when he first hits it, you think it's going to go miles wide, but it bends into the top corner.
I remember it now.
It was late on in the game as well. It was real skill to bring that run to an end. When confidence is low, you maybe take a few extra touches or what have you. But cracking goal, and of course, the main talking point that day, forget the result, we were all introduced to a certain Milton Nunes.
Yes, I remember that. And then didn't he make his debut against Wimbledon?
Yes, that is right, Chris.
Because I remember being in the stands when he came on at half time, and I remember the fella behind us going, "Is that a Ben?" We've signed a Ben. How old is?
I seem to think, because wasn't his nickname Tyson, which is hilarious. Because like you say, there's people thinking, is this lad still at school? You wouldn't fancy to stand him up alongside Mike Tyson or whatever. I might have
wouldn't stand him up again. David Unsworth, never mind bloody boxers.
Yeah. I imagine, or sorry, I remember, and I could have made this bit up now just because of the story. I'm sure he did a bit of shadow boxing on the touchline, as if to emphasize this Tyson nickname. And I really do hope that was true, because in my mind it was like comedy genius.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's just one of them where, afterwards you're having a bit crack on, and then you tell the story and you add a bit to it to make it sound a bit funnier.
Yeah, I think the shadow won, to be honest.
Whenever I talk to my dad about that day, he always just goes, I just remember him coming out and thinking, his shirt doesn't fit. His shirt doesn't even fit him.
But to be fair, this was just coming out of the 1990s where nobody wore clothes that fit properly.
Yeah. To be fair, nobody's shirts fit them. But I think old Tyson was a slightly special case. Like,
yeah, go back and have a look at some of the suits that Barry Venison wore and stuff like that back in the 90s, and that might.
I think I'd rather not.
Well, anyway, moving on.
Chris, before you move on, just serious full marks for the Shadow Wood. That was brilliant, man.
1 on points. But anyway, so after that, we had in 19 games actually between the two sides, between 2002 and 2012, we played them 19 times in those 10 years and didn't win once. One of those defeats was late on in that run in March 2012. It was an FA Cup quarter-final replay at the Stadium of Light. Just here's a quiz for you, gents. I hope you haven't got it in front of you. But can you tell me who we beat on the way to that quarter-final?
I'll let Jonny go first. I think I might fancy me chances.
We're looking for 3 clubs, 3rd, 4th, and 5th round.
I've got a memory of playing Peterborough.
Yes, that was the 3rd round.
I think did James McLean score in that one?
I think so.
I think so. I remember watching that on ITV. Weird overriding memory of that game, but there you go, Peterborough.
Peterborough won.
I think it was then Middlesbrough and Arsenal.
Was that the Middlesbrough game? Sessegnon scored that. Yes, that was a great game, that.
Yeah.
Chris, sorry, Jonny, if you're saying you remember watching it on ITV, I think we were on ITV each round of the cup.
We definitely were against Borough as well. As soon as you've said that, I can remember it vividly in my mind.
It was like the first time we'd been on terrestrial TV in donkey's years, and then suddenly they couldn't get enough of us. We were on every other week. It was aye.
Yeah, so we knocked out Peterborough, Middlesbrough after a replay, of course, in the 4th round, and then we knocked out Arsenal in the 5th round. I think there was only 20-odd thousand against Arsenal.
And was that the Arsenal game where Per Mertesacker injured himself trying to chase the ball back, and that's how we scored? Or was that because didn't we play them in consecutive games in the league and then in the cup?
Yes, that sounds right.
And one of them was the one Thierry Henry come back and scored in, didn't he? When he came back on loan to Arsenal. God, I'm testing his ear, like.
I know.
This is sounding familiar. Like,
I always confuse which game was which.
We did play them back to back because we got beat 2-1 at home the game before in front of 40,000. Then there was only 26,000 there the week after for the cup game.
Because we're all watching it on ITV, Chris.
Yeah, it makes sense because James McLean scored on 70 minutes and Mertesacker went off on 72 minutes.
That'll be it. He did himself turn and turned, and a ligament must have gone or something because he just dropped like a sack of spuds, and we were all going, "Go on!" Yeah. McLean goes through and scores.
Yeah,
not much sympathy in the stadium. I like that day.
Yeah, that's right, because they took the lead with 20 minutes to go. Then Aaron Ramsey equalised 5 minutes later, and Thierry Henry. Good memory, Jonny. Well done.
Mid sort of early to mid 2000s. I am your man.
well, perfect, because obviously this game, the quarter final of the FA Cup, because we drew at Goodison, and it was 1-1. Can you remember who scored? Jonny at Goodison.
I've just bigged myself up, and I've
well, you see,
completely. What I've done is I've wiped that whole tie from my mind because of what a certain Welshman did in the return leg, we'll get onto.
We're going to get onto that. It was Phil Bardsley who scored it. Sorry, it was right on the tip of your tongue there, Andrew. I saw you just about to jump in.
It was a good goal. Good goal, Chris, if you remember it.
Yeah,
and because he had a bit of a habit of scoring for us. But yes, Chris, you got in ahead of us there.
Yeah. So this quarterfinal, and this was huge because we bring them back to our place for the replay, and it ended up being a few days after we'd beaten Queen's Park Rangers at home 3-1. Jibril Cisse was actually sent off for QPR that day. That win moved us up to 8th in the Premier League table, and a few days later we were potentially going to be in the FA Cup semi-final. And I mean, Jonny, you're talking about that time, you're remembering that time really well, but under Martin O'Neill, at that point, moving up to 8th in the Premier League, beating QPR 3-1 at home, potentially because we'd played really well in that first game at Goodison Park, and everyone was backing us to get into the semi-final of the FA Cup. It felt like under Martin O'Neill at that point, we'd cracked it.
It did. I've never... certainly at the time, I couldn't remember having ever been so confident going to games since O'Neill came in that little run, those first few months, from the Blackburn game where things kind of kicked off under O'Neill with that late Larson free kick. From that point, obviously, we didn't win every game or anything, but it very much felt like we were gathering momentum and things were really starting to come together in a way that they just had not really... Not ever under Bruce might be a little bit harsh, but certainly in a long time under Steve Bruce, it had been nothing like this where we were really getting a bit of a head of steam and starting to chain together good performances and good results. So yeah, it felt like we were on the precipice of something massive, and this was the game that we needed to just get over the line somehow. Doesn't matter how, don't care how we play. Because we'd have been to quibble about whether this is a good thing or not, but we'd have been going to Wembley for the semi-final, wouldn't we? So it felt like you say, we were a lot of exposure through the cup run to that point, and then if we'd got to Wembley and things were going well, it felt like things could have really, gone up another level. And then what happens, and it's all kiboshed a bit.
This might be my memory. You might be absolutely right there, Jonny. But was it Wembley semi-finals in 2012? Was it that early?
I think it was like right at the start of it coming in, because I'm sure that's why everyone was so excited on the day. Because it was, if we win this, we're going to Wembley. Doesn't matter whether we win the semi, we'll get a day out. But I'll double check that just to cover me tracks. But sure.
You're more than likely right. But I might have wiped that from my memory just to say, well, we didn't miss out on a trip to Wembley. But looking
I've just checked. It was.
Oh, brilliant, good stuff. Well, yeah, that just rubs salt in the wound. Brilliant, thanks, Jonny. For checking that. Just quickly in the Everton lineup again, the Everton manager that night, of course, was David Moyes, just to rub it in again. 3 players in that Everton side who went on to play for Sunderland. Darren Gibson, of course, was in the starting 11. And on 2 unused substitutes, Victor Anichebe and James McFadden were 2 unused substitutes there.
A real who's who of Sunderland royalty that you've just read out there.
Yeah, right. And here's the Sunderland 11: Mignolet in goal, Phil Bardsley, Wayne Bridge, Kyriakos, who's going to come into the conversation, Michael Turner at the back, and then in midfield we've got Seb Larson, Lee Catmull, Craig Gardner, and James McLean, and Sessegnon and Nicholas Bentner up top. The 43,140 were there, and it had a proper old-fashioned cup tie under the lights. And I know Martin O'Neill was particularly excited. We were lucky enough to speak to Martin O'Neill, and he was, as a kid, he was listening on his crystal radio to Sunderland play Manchester United in the FA Cup, and that's how he got hooked on Sunderland, and he thought this was his moment to almost repeat itself and potentially win an FA Cup. Incidentally, Roy Keane and Peter Reid were in the Sky studio analysing this one. And going into the game, we can see straight away that we haven't started the game well. We started really sluggish. You just knew that something didn't feel quite right. And after around 25 minutes, Andrew, Fellaini strides forward with the ball, and the ball's ended up playing into the box, and Kyriakos completely misjudges the ball in, and Jelavic scores from close range. And if you remember rightly, Kyriakos had an absolute stinker in this one.
He did. He was poor. He didn't actually play many games for us. He came in on loan with a good reputation, and just we didn't see anything of it. He was not very good for us at all. Those are a couple of names I'd forgotten about. Fellaini and who scored the first one for Everton? Sorry,
Nikita Jelavic.
That's it. Yes, yeah. I remember those players. Everton were a handy team around that time, but so were we. You've gone through our lineup. That's not a bad side. My feelings about this game going into it were exactly what you two have been saying about how it was a moment and everybody was talking about it. For some reason, I don't know if it was because the cup was still important or because we were clearly safe from relegation and been doing well. But at the time I worked in an office and there was me and a mate of mine who I'm still good mates with nowadays. We were into football, so we talk about it every weekend. But then other people, for some reason, were all excited about this match. Really, they couldn't wait for it. It was peculiar. And then, Kyriakos was shocking. He's made a mistake for the goal, and it was like a balloon just being burst, wasn't it? All that optimism, it just went absolutely flat as a pancake.
But I think you're totally right to point out about the atmosphere just popping, because it's rare, isn't it, that you can actually identify a sliding doors moment before it happens. And I think everybody, you're right, like went into that game knowing a good result could mean a massive sea change almost in the fabric of the club at the time is what it felt. And you're right, as soon as that goal went in, I think collectively we all just went, it's not happening, is it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we did limp on after the goal, and we get into the second half, and it probably should have been more to Everton, if I remember rightly. But Kyriakos was subbed 5 minutes into the second half. I think you touched on this earlier, Jonny. David Vaughan replaced him. 5 minutes later, he's got the ball in midfield, looks back, and I'm sure it's Michael Turner, but I might be wrong on that front. He sells someone short with a pass, and Jelavic ends up being through on goal on a tight angle. He shoots back across goal, and the ball's going way wide of the far post. He sliced it too much. David Vaughan comes in to rescue everything, to clear the ball, but he stops the ball with 1 foot, and as he's fallen back, swipes. I mean, I'm glad I can laugh now because I wasn't laughing at the time, but he swipes the ball into his own net with his other foot. And like I said, if you look at the replay, the ball's going miles. If he just left it, if he just watched the ball go across the face of the box, it's going out for a goal kick. But it was just that sort of night, wasn't it, Jonny?
It felt like time slowed down when the ball, when Vaughan's going towards the ball on the goal line, and it's one of those almost, you're screaming in your mind, just leave it, please, don't touch it, just leave it. And then, I can't describe it in words. Like, it's it is a ridiculous way to score an own goal. And you do really feel for Vaughan as well, because he's trying so hard, so desperately just to get back in time to reach it.
Yeah.
And he doesn't. He must have thought, get in, I've cleared it. Yeah. No, you've not quite done that, Davey, mate.
Yeah, to save the day after making the original mistake.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm here, lads. It's all right. I'm tidying up.
To be the one who gave the ball away as well, like, it's just... We've talked a lot, haven't we, about the old idea of typical Sunderland. Yeah. That was typical Sunderland in a nutshell, in one goal, in one game.
Yeah, and if you watch, there's a bit on YouTube with Peter Reid analysing it, and it's so funny because it's shown the replay almost in slow motion, and Peter Reid just stops talking, and when David Vaughan does it, he goes, "Well, yeah." He really just doesn't know what to say. And then he tries to say, "Well, the pitch isn't the best," but he's like trying to get him out of it because he knows how big a moment it was. But just looking at Martin O'Neill, Andrew, after that, he never really recovered. I mean, that was his moment. He didn't really feel the same in terms of how he was. He just felt that was his big moment. And actually, we had 8 games left of that season and didn't win any of them.
It went downhill really quickly. Probably as quickly as it had gone uphill when he took over a few months prior, because he came in under like a wave of emotion and memories because of his links with Sunderland and being a fan as a kid. And we were flying under him. Jonny mentioned there, James McLean was in the goals. He'd scored against Peterborough and was involved in that one against Arsenal. O'Neill had given him his chance to shine at first team level, and just everything he seemed to touch was just turning to gold. And then in complete contrast, after that Everton game, there was just this feeling of, well, you should have known all along, lads. Why on earth did you allow yourselves to dream about getting to the semi-finals? It was never going to happen. You know, I was mentioning there at the time I worked in an office and sat at the desk next to a good friend of mine. Me and him would always talk about football and have a bit crack on about it. And we used to always get annoyed by other people chipping in and saying stuff and just be like, you don't go to the games. What you on about, man? You're just talking rubbish. I remember the day after, sat at me desk, miserable as sin, and somebody starts piping up about that David Vaughan moment. And I just thought, I can't even be bothered. I've got nothing. Normally, I would try and have a reasoned discussion and say, oh, well, you know, whatever, we're doing our best. It's hard to be a professional footballer, but there was, bless him, thought, Davey, you're on your own this one. I'm not going to be able to defend you after that. It was just a funny moment, but none of us were laughing at the time, I don't think.
No, just to rubber stamp the point about how that was where it all kind of, the bubble burst for O'Neill. The very next game, 4 days later, was when we went to the Etihad and we were 3-1 up against City with 5 minutes left and ended up drawing 3-3. And who was it who came on with the 10 minutes to play and ended up sending the defence to pot? Oh, Sotirios Kyrgiakos. So, well done, mate. Twice in 4 days.
Yep. What a spectacular way to go out the quarterfinal stage of an FA Cup. But actually on the same night, incidentally, Tottenham and Bolton, they played in what was kind of a replay because in the first game, Fabrice Muamba collapsed on the pitch and they abandoned that first game. So on the same night, they actually replayed that, which was, and I think it was a strange atmosphere there. Right, we'll move on to the last one because we did have the win over them under Paolo Di Canio, which we'll save for another day, I think. But then we moved to May 2016 for our last one. We've already mentioned it, the huge 3-0 win over Everton under Sam Allardyce. We'd actually only won twice in 14 games before the Chelsea game that took place a few days before this one. But we had hope because 8 of those were draws. But we did end up beating Gus Hiddink Chelsea 3-2 after being 2-1 down with just over 20 minutes left on the clock. Then, of course, that incredible Jermaine Defoe goal won it. But we'd set it up because of that result. We'd set it up for this game against Everton, which then turned out to be absolutely huge because the bottom of the table before the game, it was Aston Villa, bottom of the table on 17 points. They were down. They were done. Norwich City were next on 31. They had 2 games left. The Mags then were third bottom on 34 points. They had 1 game left. And then we were 17th on 35 points with 2 games left. So it was only a point between the two clubs, and this was our game in hand. And if we didn't get a win in this one, we were going to set up a big finale on the last day of the season where it was between us and them and only a point in it and all that sort of stuff. And that would have been some final day. Sky would have been all over that. But again, it was one of them, Jonny, we talked about, me and Andrew talked about that, that Everton game, the last day at Roker Park. But I think this had a similar feeling about it, didn't it? Where we went in almost bullish about it, thinking, yeah, this is going to be a night where we're going to do it.
That is exactly what I was thinking as you were just sort of giving your little intro to the game there. I was thinking, it is funny because it was such a pressurised game, really. When you take, the Sunderland Newcastle side of it kind of out of the equation, you just look at it and you go, we're the team in 17th, we're only a point off the team in 18th. This is our game in hand. Oh, if this goes wrong, then the pressure didn't feel like that at all, did it at the time? I think what probably helped was obviously normally you've got the the rather large stick of relegation behind you, but we also had a pretty big carrot dangling in front of us of win this and relegate the Mags. So I think having something positive to kind of rally around and aim at and think about, rather than, oh God, this is a big game in the relegation battle, it was, we might not get this chance again for a long, long, long time, so we better make it count while we can. Yeah. And then obviously we'll talk about the way the game unfolded, but it did feel very much like it had that sort of energy to it right from sort of the first whistle for me.
Yeah. And actually watching the highlights back, Andrew, and you talk about Sam Allardyce and David Moyes, you know, the following season with pretty much the same players. You watch this game from the first minute, Khazri's chasing down defenders in their half, winning the ball back in their half, and everyone's cheering him, chasing down players. And you look at the player that Moyes had the season after, and it's almost kind of chalk and cheese. It's two completely different players, but it's almost like this is how you can see the difference between managers, things like this, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah. That's an excellent point. That the comparison between Sunderland under Allardyce and under Moyes was just shown there. Khazri is a great example of phenomenal for us under Allardyce and dreadful under Moyes. Now, the player themselves have got to take a bit of responsibility in that situation. But we've said before, Kirchhoff, Allardyce knew exactly how to keep him on the pitch and get him playing. Whereas Moyes, it's as if he'd been dragged back from like the early years of football. He wouldn't accept that this lad had like ongoing injury concerns and seemed determined to run him into the ground. But yeah, that night was a special night. Did you say there, Chris, that Villa were on 17 points at that stage with like maybe one game left to play?
Yep.
Sunderland now in 2025 are on 17 points. I mean, I know I'm not saying anything new here, but it does just bring home how good we are this
season. We're seeing again.
Just what a start we've had. I'm also quite surprised that you said there that under Allardyce we'd had a run of so many draws. In my mind's eye, I seem to remember the Norwich win and a couple of other victories. But now you mention it, Chris, you're right. We were having in a couple of games to get like late equalisers to rescue a point. It's just funny how you tell yourself the story differently, and I'd convinced myself that Allardyce took us on a 10-game winning run or something.
Yeah. Between 16th of January and the 30th of April, we played in, like I said, those 14 games. We won 2. We won the Norwich game, and we beat Manchester United at home as well, 2-1. But we drew 8, which kept our points ticking over. So we went. It was kind of. I think we'd lost in that time. We might have lost 2 in 13 or something like that. But at the same time, we weren't getting wins either. But it was. You could feel us building up to something because we were getting better and better following that January window. And just on that, Jonny, I mean, if you look back at the highlights of this game, and there's some quite long highlights where you can watch quite a decent stint of the game. But Jan Kirchhoff, unbelievable. I mean, he's cutting balls out in front of the back four and everything. And again, Andrew's talking about managing him. He came off with 20 minutes to go in this game, which is a good example of how Allardyce managed him.
Well, I mean, Allardyce cracked the secret, which is get your best players on the pitch right from the start, and then hopefully the game's won by the time they need to come off for a rest anyway. But yeah, I mean, Kirchhoff was such a silky footballer to watch. Like, you could tell that he deserved to have been at Bayern Munich. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't one of these players who comes from a big club, who's not quite made it, and you kind of look at them and you go, how the hell did you even get a contract there in the first place? Like, with the greatest will in the world, some of the signings we made in that bad time, I'm thinking Donald Love from Man United is the one that comes straight to my head, and you would expect more from an ex-Man United player, you know? Whereas Kirchhoff, you could tell that if he could have stayed fit, there's a world in which he could have even maybe made a go of it at Bayern Munich. I think he was that good in terms of his ability. And thankfully, this was one of the occasions where he managed to show it in a Sunderland shirt. And I mean, I'm saying one of the occasions. That whole half season, he was brilliant, except his debut, actually, where he had a complete stinker, didn't he? But basically, from every game after that, he was brilliant. And yeah, that was what kept us up, wasn't it? That season, that January window, obviously, and Big Sam coming in. But the January window was huge. You've mentioned Kasri already. Kirchhoff was just a joy to watch when he was on it. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about the other of the big January signings, maybe 2 more times in this match.
Yes, we certainly will. But just quickly move on to the because it was a free kick won by Jermaine Defoe just 5 minutes before half time. Still don't understand this, Andrew, but Patrick Van Aanholt stepped up and Kasri started standing over the ball as well. And he hit it low and it went through a gap in the wall. I always, in my mind, until I watched this back, I always thought it took a massive deflection, but it didn't.
Did it not?
No.
I remember it.
Yeah, it goes through a gap in the wall, but it's this thing where it just goes through a gap in the wall that we made, I think.
Right.
But yeah, it's low through the wall, and the goalkeeper just doesn't move, and you think it's taking a deflection because of the way the keeper doesn't move. But yeah, just straight in. It's a really bizarre free kick.
It is bizarre. It's bizarre that I've remembered it slightly differently.
I did.
Yeah. And it's bizarre that Van Aanholt took it, perhaps, when you think of the other options there. Although, give him his dues, Van Aanholt was a divisive player for us, but he was an attacking threat. That goal, Chris, I think that was the real key moment, because whenever you're playing against a team and there's accusations of them being on the beat, I often think, well, that's disrespectful. You know, the Premier League athletes, these lads are not just going to be happy to turn up and get beaten. That said, when a team like that goes 1-0 down, do they necessarily have that hunger to get back into it? Had Everton scored the first goal, you could have very easily seen them bringing out all the tricks and giving it the olays and all of that. And then that's very difficult to beat a team like that. But once we'd got 1-0 up through Van Aanholt, that for me felt pretty much like it's done now.
Yeah. And if you look at the highlights of this, Patrick Van Aanholt turns around and runs straight over to Sam Allardyce and gives him a big hug. Which again,
I bet your Bomber's jealous of that.
Yeah, well, I was just about to say, talking about him being divisive. If you want to know how divisive, please go back into our previous episodes, way back into our best fullback top 10 episode.
That wasn't a dig. I wasn't having a dig. I'd forgotten about that. I wasn't having a pop. I remember Van Aanholt. Some people loved him.
Yeah.
And some people had.
Yeah, loved him a bit too much. But if you, so anyone who hasn't listened back to that, just find out why Andrew's having a dig at Bomber.
I'm not, man. I'm not. I'm genuinely not. I'm just. For me, I had question marks over him. That's all it was.
Well, let's go on to the next goal, because actually, it was only a few minutes later. Actually, we keep the ball alive, loop the ball back into the box, and this kind of sums it up. Johnny, you mentioned Cornet coming into it, but this mentioned up because, like that Chelsea game, he was an absolute rock, and this one as well, and it kind of summed things up with the way Cornet smashed the ball into the back of the net in this second goal, didn't it? It kind of summed the night up, didn't it?
I don't know whether he hit that ball harder or Yaya Toure into the East Stand when we played City a few weeks earlier. Yeah, no, it did, didn't it? It was like that goal itself was almost an encapsulation of the outpouring of relief and joy and schadenfreude at the Mags that we knew was then, well, I say new. I'm sure there were a lot of people in the stadium still thinking, well, it's not quite over yet, but you know, I think the atmosphere and the mood was very much a one of expectation after that goal went in. And like you say, the way that he smashed it into the net, you know, probably could have demolished the North Stand if there hadn't been a net in the way. But yeah, that it was Cornet to a T as well, wasn't it? Like brute force and aggression and desire and commitment to be able to get in position, beat everybody else to the ball, lashes at home, full of commitment. And I think that half season, you know, Cornet and that partnership we had with Kabul, it was brilliant defensively, obviously, and he was a physical specimen. But I think that half season before what then transpired in the following summer, I think Cornet was really starting to build a proper rapport and relationship with the fans as well. You know, it felt like there was a lot of mutual admiration from us to him as a player and him to us as a group of fans, and it was getting a lot of support. So it did feel kind of right in a way that at least one of those trio of January signings got to have a proper moment in the sun in this game, because Kazri kind of had his moment against Chelsea, didn't he, when he scored that absolute belter from outside the box. Kone gets 2 moments in this game, but this one in particular gets his moment. It's a bit of a shame that Kirchhoff never really got something like that to really hang his Sunderland reputation off. But yeah, it summed Kone up, certainly. When you watch the finish, that was how he approached everything that season.
Well, I think Kirchhoff actually played 90 minutes once, so I think that was his kind of glory moment, wasn't it, when he actually completed a full game? But they talked about Kazri. Maybe he nearly had another moment for the third goal, Andrew, because the corner looked like it was going straight in, and the keeper kind of palmed it out, and Kone finished it off from a yard out. But again, I think Johnny's right. There was, for this goal as well, there was just a big outpouring. I mean, but this kicked off a huge celebration because we knew what it meant at this point, didn't we? We knew that at 2-0, you never know. We've seen some things happen at Sunderland where you're like, 2's maybe not enough. Getting that third goal, 10 minutes into the second half, it was celebration time then, wasn't it? I mean, it's not often you have a game where you've sent the Mags down and you've survived in the Premier League, is it?
Oh yeah, I don't remember sending the Mags down at all. I don't think anybody mentioned that around me at the time. They were just, pleased to see Sunderland doing well. Yeah, Kone's finish, he hit that ball with some feeling, and the fans reacted with some feeling as well. Amazing scenes and a mixture of joy and happiness and relief. And yeah, as well, it is a special moment if you send your local rivals down. Like, to directly send them down is a pretty rare but exhilarating feeling. Just a great night. Again, it's a night game at the stadium, which I think adds a bit to the buzz, and something that says to me just how stand out that game was. I don't know if either of you lads have seen, but the club have arranged with the council to put up a lot of banners around on lamp columns by the Wearmouth Bridge and the Kiel crossing, and the theme is all moments that matter. So there's one of Defoe celebrating against the Mags. There's I think there might be Phillips against Chelsea. Well, Kone, his 2 goals against Everton have been included in this list. There must only be about 7 or 8 games that have been referenced on these banners, and the Kone one is. And it's just a shame, as Jonny was talking us through there, Kone, at that point we all bloody loved him. He was fantastic, and we loved a big, strong Sunderland defender who just, would run through people and knock over some of the biggest Premier League players. And then it was Everton, actually. It was Everton that came in for him in the summer, and it all changed for him, and the way he's looked at now is very different.
He was very reminiscent. Now, when you were just describing him there, do you not think Ballard is a very similar player to Kone when you actually think about the styles of play now? And there's a reason that we all love Big Dan so much as well, because like you say, we do love that archetype of player, a proper big bruiser who'll get in amongst it and get his hands dirty.
I think that's a really good comparison. I think Ballard, funnily enough, is one of the other players who have been picked out for these banners. This is a direct plea to Dan Ballard. Please don't break our hearts in the same way Kone did. We couldn't cope with it if you did it as well,
The other person I wanted to quickly mention, actually, because again, watching the game back, or a lot of the game back, Kabul, how good he was, you forget sometimes. He took on a couple of players and had a shot, tried to bend it in the far corner early on in this game, and you just forget how good a footballer he was. But it did mean that, look, our win, because Norwich won their game in hand as well. So actually, if we hadn't have won this game, because after this game, Norwich were on 34 points, Newcastle were on 34 points, we would have been on 35 points if Everton had beaten us. So that would have been that tight going into the last day of the season. But as it turned out, we were on 38, and Shearer his business at Newcastle, of course. But anyway, we'll leave that was our last game. We'll leave that behind. Just one more thing I wanted to do before we go. We talked about Paul Bracewell right up front, and he's one of the obvious players, I think, who played for both clubs. But I just wanted to do something with the both of you to see who could maybe come up with the most obscure player you've maybe got who played for both clubs off the top of your head really quickly. Who the type of players who you go, oh God, yeah, I forgot he played for us and Everton. I don't know if we can try and have one from each of you who you go, yeah, I forgot about him.
I can go for depressing. I could reel off a load of depressing ones.
Who's the most obscure?
Obscure?
The one you forget that played for both clubs.
Here you go. I think we signed him from Everton. Brett Angel.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good shout. Yeah. Jonny?
Sticking on the theme of depressing that Andrew brought up, I'll go Brendan Galloway.
Oof, God, yes, actually, yes.
My overriding memory of whom is watching him get absolutely massively done in the air by a 70-yard ball over the top the first game in the Championship against Derby at the Stadium of Light, and we conceded a goal from it. So, cheers, Brendan.
There you go, 2 crackers there. I've got 2 I'll throw into the mix who I forgot were at both clubs. First being Alec Chamberlain. I forgot he was at Everton at one point. And the other one I always forget, because obviously I think he was, certainly from our point of view, more high profile at us and Derby, is Colin Todd.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
That's one for Kelvin out there. But I always forget that he went on to play for Everton. But that leaves us there. We've gone through 3 big games against Everton. We've gone through good and the bad there, I think. So fantastic stuff. It just leaves me to say thank you again for your time, Andrew.
Loved it. Thank you very much, gents. And I look forward to spending the rest of my day shouting out the names of random former Everton / Sunderland players. John Oster, there you go. I'll sign off with John Oster.
Yeah. You're going to look like a madman walking along the street shouting random names out. But there you go. Jonny, thanks very much, mate. Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Pleasure is all mine, mate. And I'll be spending the rest of the day trying not to chew our lass's ear off about that FA Cup game and David Vaughan's own goal for the rest of the afternoon, I reckon.
Yeah, well, don't forget we're going to be all thinking about the game tomorrow because obviously the game is tomorrow, and so we're all building up to that. So we'll have a preview more than likely dropping in the morning. So get on that on our Monday morning preview, which is our first of the season, of course. But thanks again for everyone for listening. Of course, we'll have all of the reaction after the game, either on the Roker Report website, or we'll have a pod that should be dropping very soon after the final whistle. If you're going to stay up, it might be a 5-0 victory, and the adrenaline's pumping, and you just can't get enough of it, and you want to listen to our reaction after the final whistle. If not, it'll be there on Tuesday morning, and with our daily releases on How We're the Podcast. But from us, it's bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.